A woman is found beaten and shot twice in the trunk of her own car. Her hair has been hacked off, her fingernails cut down to the cuticle, and the man responsible, he doesn't run, he doesn't hide. He shows up at her funeral, he donates to her GoFundMe, and for nearly 2 years he watches investigators chase everyone, except him. This is the story of Heather Bogle. Heather was 28 years old, a single mother to her young daughter, Mackenzie. She worked the overnight shift at Whirlpool specifically so she could be home during the day, present for her daughter's life. She was studying to become a nurse, chasing something better for the two of them. Her family describes her the way you'd expect. Devoted, warm, her whole world built around that little girl. Her sister Jennifer would later say that Heather's life, simply, was her daughter. Missing a pickup without a word was something Heather would never let happen. That's exactly what made April 9, 2015, feel wrong from the very first hour. Security cameras caught Heather clocking out of her shift at 6:17 a.m. She should have gone home. She should have picked up Mackenzie from school that afternoon. She never did. Her mother started calling. No answer. And anyone who knew Heather knew immediately something was deeply wrong. This wasn't like her. Not even close. The following day, investigators found Heather's car parked at the Summiton Apartments in Clyde. Inside the trunk was her body. She'd been shot twice in the back. Beaten. Her hair cut away at the roots, her nails trimmed almost to nothing, a chilling, deliberate attempt to strip away any trace of forensic evidence. She was dressed in a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, several sizes too big. It wasn't hers. Investigators knew immediately this wasn't random. Whoever did this had planned it, cleaned up after it. But who? That question sent the investigation down a road that would cost innocent people their reputations, and cost one detective his career. Lead investigator Sean O'Connell zeroed in on a theory early, that Heather's death was personal, tied to someone in her immediate orbit. Suspicion fell on a resident of the apartment complex where Heather's car was found. A young woman investigators believed had worn a shirt resembling the one found on Heather's body, whose social media activity around the case drew further scrutiny, and on a man who'd been at her apartment the night Heather disappeared. None of them had committed this crime. But for the better part of 2 years, they lived under the shadow of suspicion, publicly named, publicly doubted, while the actual killer clocked in for his shifts at Whirlpool, just like always. While detectives built a case against people with no connection to Heather's death, the man actually responsible was going about his life, completely unbothered, a few miles down the road. Nearly a year went by before the case was reassigned to a new investigator, Major Nick Kotsopoulos. He started over, cleared the old suspects one by one. Then he did something the original investigation hadn't fully done. He followed Heather's own digital trail. Cell phone pings. GPS data. A final location that placed her near a trailer park just a few miles from the Whirlpool plant the morning she vanished. That trailer belonged to a coworker, a man in his late 40s named Daniel Myers. When investigators approached him, he was polite, distant, cooperative on the surface, but he declined to voluntarily hand over a DNA sample, so they went and got a warrant. The results connected him to a trace of DNA recovered from underneath Heather's fingernail. Investigators would later point to that detail as something close to a final act of defiance from Heather herself. Whatever happened in her last moments, she fought back, and in doing so, left the one piece of evidence that would eventually convict her killer. And here's where the story turns genuinely disturbing. Searching Myers' home, investigators found floorboards replaced within days of Heather's death. Floorboards they believed covered the spot where she'd been shot, torn out to erase blood and bullet damage. Meanwhile, they learned Myers had donated $125 to Heather's GoFundMe. He'd gone to her funeral. He stood among the people mourning her, presenting himself as one more person devastated by her death, while the truth sat locked inside him the entire time. It raises an uncomfortable question that true crime keeps circling back to. How many killers do exactly this? Not flee, not vanish, but insert themselves into the grief, the search, the vigils, precisely because it's the last place anyone would think to look. The investigation into Heather's death eventually became an investigation into the investigation itself. Questions mounted over how Detective O'Connell had handled the case, and over evidence tied to the wrongly pursued suspects. O'Connell ultimately resigned and was sentenced to prison time for tampering with evidence. In February 2019, nearly 4 years after Heather disappeared, Daniel Myers pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and evidence tampering. Prosecutors dropped the death penalty as part of the agreement. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The courtroom that day was heavy with emotion. Family members stood and spoke directly to Myers, and the common thread running through every statement was the same. They did not forgive him. Heather's mother had a message read aloud to him by a victim's advocate. She said she'd prayed every day for her daughter to come home safe, and only later understood that God had taken her home instead. When the judge asked Myers if he wanted to say anything, offer any explanation, any apology, he declined. Sheriff Chris Hilton, whose department had reopened and rebuilt the case from scratch, spoke afterward about what the conviction meant. A dangerous man was off the streets for good, and a family could finally begin to grieve properly. There's a haunting postscript, too. Years later, questions resurfaced about an earlier death connected to Myers, his ex-girlfriend, who died of a gunshot wound in 2009 in a case ruled a suicide at the time. Her sister has never accepted that ruling and has said publicly she always suspected Myers was responsible. Nothing has been proven, and no charges were filed. It remains an open question, not an accusation, but it's the kind of detail that lingers. Heather Bogle should be remembered as more than the subject of a murder case. She was a mother who structured her entire life around her daughter, a woman working toward a nursing career, trying to build something better. A sister, a friend, someone people describe, even now with real tenderness, someone whose absence is still felt in Sandusky County, more than a decade later. Justice came for Heather, but it came late, delayed by tunnel vision, by assumptions, by a killer who understood exactly how to hide in plain sight, and by an investigation that had to be torn down and rebuilt before the truth could surface. So here's the question worth sitting with. How many other cases right now are being shaped by an investigator's early theory instead of the evidence itself? And how many families are still waiting for someone to start over? Let me know what you think.